What's up, Mecha fans, and welcome back to the channel. So today we are taking a look back once again at Code Geass Akito the Exiled. A few weeks back I did a review of it, and today we're going to be doing a character tier list where we're going to rank every single character, or at least every single major character in the series. Before we dive into that though, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. And head on down to the comment section below, let me know your ranking, your favourite characters in Code Geass Akito the Exiled. And without further ado, let us get into that tier list. You all know the drill. As per usual, we've got S, A, B, C, D, and F tier this time around because there are F tier characters here. And we're kicking things off with the title character, Akito Hyuga. I really do enjoy this character, to be honest. He is definitely one of the better characters in the show, which you would hope for, considering that he is like kind of one of the main characters. You pretty much have two protagonists here in Akito and Leila, who we'll dive into later. But yeah, Akito is a great soldier. He's awesome in the action sequences. I think he's got a pretty interesting backstory, to be quite honest, as well. And just generally an interesting storyline going on within the show. One of the things I do love about him the most though is how wild and crazy you can get when it comes to the action. He's a relatively like reserved, more of an introverted personality when you see him like around other characters and that, but when you see him get into those action sequences and particularly certain things that go on here, he just goes so crazy and it is awesome to see. I do love a crazy character from time to time, and Akito can be one of those. So we're going to sit him nicely in A tier. Next up though, we've got Andrea Farnes, who is one of the leaders of the other orders within the Euro-Britannia nation and kind of the governments and leaderships at the top of that. I think he is pretty solid, simply because when you put him up against like a lot of the other people like higher up in the government, he does seem to be like one of the more competent ones. He is unsure about like certain characters that come into this with Shin and also Julius Kingsley, should I say. When those two characters kind of come into it, he's very unsure of them and their motives, and yeah, he questions those kind of things, and it makes him, you know, an interesting character to have within that circle where, you know, there's these people coming in, and, you know, obviously like someone there is not going to trust them, is not going to, is going to question some of their motives and such. So that part of him is interesting as like an actual character, and that he's not got like amazing development or anything like that, but I do like kind of his role in terms of questioning stuff and just being unsure, kind of having his own thoughts on things. So we're going to sit him nicely into C tier. And then we'll move on to Ashley Ashra. Again, another one of those kind of crazy characters that just is very fun to watch. He starts off as a villain in the second episode of the OVA and then comes around and joins with the rest of our heroes, and I enjoyed him there. I just generally enjoy his personality. He's a lot of fun to be there. A little bit of a wild card in some cases as well, but that is always going to be entertaining. So we'll sit him into B tier. Next up we've got Ayano Kosaka, one of the characters that gets thrown into the W0 unit. I think in terms of a lot of these, they are not the greatest fleshed out characters ever. But what I do like about Akito the Exiled is the kind of team dynamic, particularly when you've got like Ayano, Ryo, I think his name is, Akito, Leila, and then someone else who's like kind of right down at the bottom here. Like that 5 group dynamic I did really enjoy, especially when they're taking a bit of downtime. I surprisingly enjoyed that quite a lot. But in terms of like individual personality and character, they're not the greatest ever, particularly like these 3 that end up joining up at the end of the first episode. So Ayano, as much as I enjoy, you know, watching her on screen, and she's nice to look at, don't get me wrong, she's not the most amazing character. I'm going to put her in B. I do like her a decent amount, but I think I like Ashley just a little bit more in terms of what he offers entertainment value wise, if you will. Next up, we've got the Caretaker of Space-Time, one of the most random characters to appear in this series, a Geass user seemingly, but also not. I don't really understand this character at all. Shows up like in 2 scenes. There's no like explanation for what this character is, why she's appearing. It's just kind of, it feels very lazy as a character, where you know there's maybe something interesting there in terms of diving into the lore, but they really just don't do anything with it. I like a character design maybe, but that's really all she's got going for her in my opinion, so we're going to sit this one into D tier. Then we've got Klaus Warwick, who is a pretty major part of the W0 unit. I think he's okay. I mean, they gave him motivation, which is decent enough, but I feel like the motivation's not really fleshed out all that well, and it almost kind of comes out of nowhere. They kind of like tease a little bit that, okay, there's some ties with having a daughter or something. But when they showed that picture and it was like him, his daughter, and then presumably his ex-wife, I thought that a lot of the plotline with him was going to tie more into who the ex-wife was, because she was kind of blocked out. But I don't really know. There was maybe potential to do more with that storyline, but because a lot of that kind of only comes into the last episode, and even then it's not really fleshed out in a very interesting way. He was a character that maybe had a bit more potential than was actually showcased on screen. I'm going to sit this one in C. Not the worst ever. I think he's maybe got a little bit more characterization as opposed to Andrea, but again, not the most amazing character ever, especially when it comes to some of the other characters in our main group of heroes. Next up, we've got Jean Smilus, who I think is, I want to say is like the Prime Minister of Euro Britannia or something, high up in the government, if you will. I would say he's a relatively interesting character. I kind of like these, I don't want to say wild card ones, but the ones that are maybe out for themselves or have like ulterior motives. And I think Code Geass is pretty much filled with those kind of characters. They're always kind of using someone to get what they want, and sending someone into like a certain scenario and situation and using the powers of certain other people to their own benefit. And I think those characters can be pretty interesting, and I think they do an alright job with Jean. I'd say he's a solid B tier character, but I'm going to put him right at the bottom there. Then we'll move on to Grand Duke Valenis, a similar kind of case to Andrea Farnese, who doesn't have much of a plotline himself, but I do almost respect and appreciate any character that's super high up in government that does actually care about the people. He doesn't allow certain things to go forward because, well, it could result in like a massacre and lots of people ultimately killed. That's kind of what puts him at odds in many ways with Julius Kingsley. So again, a C tier character. I think Andrea is maybe just a little bit more interesting, has a little bit more screen time, but he's not the worst of the worst ever. Next up, we've got the grannies. I've basically grouped all these together. They're entertaining, like they're fun characters to have around. I think they make for a decent part of the plotline of Akito the Exiled, where you have our main group of characters just kind of chilling out and appreciating life beyond war. And that's one thing I do really appreciate about like what this series does in some ways as well, and these grannies are kind of at the forefront of that. They're a little bit weird, they're a little bit quirky, they're very quirky actually. They're not really given much, I guess, proper characterization. So I'm going to put them in C. I'm actually going to put them right at the top, just because they are just really entertaining to have around in the series. Then we'll move on to, I believe his name is Ian Malkal or Johan Malkal. I don't really know how you pronounce his name, but he's basically the stepbrother of Leila. Extremely unlikable character. Appears at the start of the series and practically appears towards the end. He's just weird. He's just like a really creepy, weird guy that is incredibly unlikable, and that is the purpose behind it, but there's nothing to this character. Straight down into F tier, I want to say our only character in F tier, but it's not going to be our only character in F tier. Next up, we move on to Jean Rao. This character is given her own little plotline, where she has feelings for Shin, and it's so boring as a plotline to me, where this character just kind of wants the supposed love of her life to notice them, but that love of her life is obviously busy with attempting to conquer the world and kill a lot of people. When that is the only trait of the character, you've lost me. Like, I am just not interested in that kind of character. If there's other character traits and if it ties into other things, fair enough, but if it's just that is what the character is, I'm just not for it. At least there's a plot line there, so I'm going to put him above the caretaker of space-time, but again, Jean goes into D tier. Next up, we've got Johann Fabius. I just don't care about this character, really. The character doesn't do anything like that would make you hate them. It's one of those characters where I just simply do not care that much about their role in the story. I don't think they really offer all that much to the series in general. So unfortunately, this one is another D tier. I'm actually going to put him in front, if I can actually get him in the tier list, in front of Jean. But on a more positive note, next up we do have Julius Kingsley, aka Lelouch v Britannia, aka Lelouch Lamperouge. This kind of bridges that gap between seasons 1 and 2, or R1 and R2 if you want to call it that, of Code Geass, Lelouch of the Rebellion. It's classic Lelouch, minus like the humanity. He's just got such a presence. When this guy walks into a room, he commands the screen. He commands everyone in the room, and you want to listen to him. He's got such a great voice. Of course, the whoever voices him, I've completely forgot off the top of my head, but does a fantastic job voicing Lelouch, or voicing Julius Kingsley in this case. I can't put him in S tier just simply because he's not really in the OVA all that much. I'm actually going to put him in A tier behind Akito because Akito has more of a character arc here, but it's Lelouch with a lack of goodness and humanity to him, which makes him incredibly fun to watch on screen. There's also pretty interesting stuff with him and Suzaku, which we'll dive more into Suzaku pretty soon. Next up, we've got Leila Malkal, who I would say is by far the most interesting character in Akito the Exiled. I would even say that she is the lead character. It feels like it's her story in many ways. There's obviously a lot of elements that are Akito's story as well, but Leila to me is by far the most interesting. Her plotline is the best. I don't necessarily want to say she's got the best backstory. It's a good backstory, don't get me wrong, but I think Akito's is just a little bit more unique. She is actually going to be our S tier character here. Now, in terms of Code Geass as a whole, I wouldn't say that Leila's an S tier character, maybe an A tier, but in terms of just specifically this series, Leila is definitely an S tier character, and the only S tier character we're going to talk about. Next up, we've got Oscar Hamill, one of the other members of the W0 unit. He just kind of exists. I kind of separated him from the rest of the W0 unit because I guess he plays a bit of a bigger role in the series and has a bit more of a presence and prominence within events and scenes and such. He's just meh. So we're going to put him in C. I'm actually going to put him right at the back of C though. He doesn't offer nothing to the series, but he also doesn't offer too much substantial, so I can't put him too high. And then we'll move on to another F tier character. We've got Pierre Anu, and I'm actually going to put this guy right at the bottom. The intention behind this character is to be incredibly unlikable, and they do succeed in that. But he's so unlikable that I just simply cannot appreciate the intention to be unlikable, if that makes sense. He's just one of the most hateable characters, probably in the Code Geass franchise, period, but especially in this particular series. Next, we'll move on to Ryo Sayama, another one of the characters that joins the W0 unit in the first episode. I wanted to say he's my favourite of those three characters, but I don't know whether he quite is. I do like him, and he's a very likeable, very charismatic kind of character, and I always enjoyed those kind of people. I wish I did a little bit more in terms of diving into him and fleshing him out as a character, maybe fleshing out his backstory just a little bit more, but, he's a solid B-tier character who I'm going to put just above Ayano. Then we'll move on to Shin Hyuga Sheing, the main antagonist of this series, brother to Akito. One of the things I do actually really respect about him is the fact that he was able to figure out that, Julius Kingsley is actually Zero, which most people won't be able to kind of figure out that kind of thing, but anyway, he's smart in that regard. I wish that his Geass was explained properly. He's great in battle and all this kind of stuff, but I just wish there was certain things about the character that were explained and maybe a bit more fleshed out, and I think ultimately the kind of conclusion to the character for me was incredibly underwhelming. We're going to put him in B still. He's still, solid. I think because he is the main antagonist, you kind of got to put him, reasonably high. But I think I just like these two characters more than him. Next up, we've got Sophie Randall, who easily has the most pointless plotline in this series, where her husband's in a coma, at the start of the series and wakes up from a coma at the end of the series. It's so pointless. It serves no purpose whatsoever as a plot line. I'm comfortably putting her into D tier. You could have taken that whole plot line out. You could have, quite frankly, taken her out because all there is to the character is the plot line, and it would not have made a single difference. Next up, we've got our one and only Suzaku Kururugi, just classic Code Geass character. He maintains the same personality and everything that you like about him, or don't like about him for a lot of other people. I love Suzaku. He's a top 3 character in Code Geass, especially in Lelouch the Rebellion, but probably a top 3 character in the whole franchise, to be quite honest with you. He has an awesome action sequence in the Lancelot, which was great to see that returning, and that action sequence is so good. And my favourite part about Suzaku in this particular series is the dynamic between him and Julius Kingsley, aka Lelouch. It's at that point where Suzaku absolutely despises him because it's following on from the end of the first season of Lelouch the Rebellion, and you just have Suzaku just hating being around Lelouch, but ultimately he's doing his duty. It's what Charles has told him to do, where he's kind of working alongside Julius Kingsley as his personal knight, if you will. And just some of the scenes there where Lelouch is asking for water and Suzaku's just stood there staring over at him, and he just despises him. Those are some of the most compelling and interesting scenes to watch in the series, for me anyway, as someone who really loved that particular dynamic in Lelouch the Rebellion. It is great to see it here. I can't put him quite into A tier, but I'm going to put him right at the top of B tier. Even though he's only in pretty much one episode, once again, it's great to see him return and absolutely makes an impression. Next up, we got the W0 unit. Now, I've grouped like pretty much every character from this particular military group together. Aside from the individual ones that I've talked about, this is more so about everyone on the control panels and things like that. They serve their purpose. There's just a lot of characters there that aren't characterized all that well, and that's understandable because it's only 5 OVAs, so ultimately it's like the equivalent of 12 like 20-minute episodes. You can't expect every character to be fleshed out. As a group, as a unit, they kind of work, but they're also not super compelling either, so I'm going to put these ones into C. I think I'm going to put them just about there. I think the grannies are just more fun. And then last but certainly not least, we have Yukiya Naruse, who I would say is perhaps the most interesting out of that group of 3. I think he's got the most kind of going for him, not necessarily in terms of personality, but just in terms of what he's able to do and what he's able to achieve. He's works as a really great hacker, so I think you have a lot of interesting sequences with that. He's able to kind of go toe-to-toe mentally with people, which I always find really fun and really, really good, to be honest, in the Code Geass franchise. But also he's given a bit of a backstory, where he, I guess, apparently blew up his school. I don't know. He's kind of wild in some cases, but at the same time, he's cool. I like him. So I'm actually going to put him above Rio. So yeah, we're going to put him solidly in B. I still like Ashley more just because he is so much fun to have on screen. But, Yukiya, he's a solid character. But there we have it. That is my tier list ranking every single Code Geass Akito the Exiled character. I'll throw it up on screen for you guys so you can see it in all its glory, where all the characters rank from S, A, B, C, D, and F tier. In S tier, we do have, of course, Leila. And then in F tier, we've got Ian and Pierre. Do not care about those characters whatsoever. Before I get out of here though, please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you're a fan of mecha anime content and want to see plenty more videos like this in the future. And head on down to the comment section below, let me know your favourite and least favourite characters in Akito the Exiled, how your tier list maybe compares to mine. And also stay tuned for more Code Geass videos coming in the future. Rosalia the Recapture is coming to a conclusion this week. I'll have a review of the full series of that and also some tier lists coming. And also we're going to be ranking all the nightmare frames in a tier list for Akito the Exiled sometime in the future. Thank you once again for tuning into Mecha Chat today. I'll see you guys next time.